Are you all familiar with C.S. Lewis's Trilemma? The three options. Okay, let me give you a quote, famous quote. When I was in seminary, I actually memorized this whole thing and forgot a lot of it. But look at what C.S. I'm going to start over because. Okay, there we go. I'm going to start over. Okay. C.S. Lewis has a famous quote in relation to the trilemma. Okay. Tri means what? Tri means three. So we have three choices. A dilemma, the dilemma is you're struggling, you have two choices. With trilemma, you have three choices. You have to choose one or the other. In the case of a trilemma, another or another, right? C.S. Lewis says, I'm trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool. You can spit at him and kill him as a demon. Or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us, and he did not intend to. So it's not a quadrilemma, right? It's a trilemma. This is not even illogical, given the fact that this man claimed to be the transcendent God of the universe. You cannot say that he was a great moral teacher. That option, that's off the table. If you want to talk about him, talk about his motives. Or you can talk about him being a madman, a lunatic. You know, yeah, he could be and you see this here, lunatic, liar, or Lord. You see it right here. Does this make sense to you? So let's break that down. So we know, based on a reliable New Testament, that there was a historical man whose name was Jesus who made these outrageous claims. You know, these claims that would be outrageous if he were not who he said he was. He claimed to be the God of the universe. So what do we do with that? We have two choices. Let me go ahead and draw this up here. Kind of diagram it out. So Jesus claimed to be God. If he claimed to be God, one of two things are true. Either the claims are false, or the claims are true. Right? One or the other. If he did say these things about himself. And you can talk about a couple other options. I mentioned it in apologetics. You can talk about him, just being a legend. He didn't really exist. He didn't say these things. But we know that's off the table too. Or maybe he claimed to be God, but he was just claiming to be one with God, as all of us are, like an Eastern mystic or something. We're all part of the great, and this naturalistic religion kind of thing. No, that's not going to work either. So we do know he claimed to be one with the Father. He claimed to be, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And he's talking about this transcendent Creator God. He was a strict monotheist as a Jew, as a Jewish rabbi, right? So he made these claims. Well, either these claims are false or they are true. If they are false, what options do we have?
He's a liar.
Yeah. So let's say we could say, let's make it look at it this way. He didn't know, or he knew. What if he really genuinely thought he was God but wasn't? What do we call him?
A lunatic.
Yeah, he's the lunatic. He's the madman. Yeah. He's on the level of someone who thinks he's a poached egg. Okay. If he knew his claims are false, then what is it?
He's a liar.
He's a liar. No. We have good reasons to believe he's not a lunatic. What more sane person who responded in so many creative ways to situations, than Jesus? He couldn't be a lunatic. Jesus is universally esteemed to be a very pure man. He never, he never told a lie. We didn't catch him in a lie. Liars lie for selfish motives. Did Jesus get anything out of the lies that he told? They persecuted him and killed him. So, no, he could not be a lunatic nor a liar. So we're going to put those off. If his claims are true, then what?
He's Lord.
He is Lord. Okay, so if you want to be alliterated, he is Lord and God. Yeah. And in that case, we can either accept or reject him. Okay. Accept this or not accept it. We can reject. So I'll review it in the PowerPoint as well. So either his claims are true or false if he claimed to be God. If false, he's either a liar or a lunatic. If true, he's Lord. In that case, we have two options. We can accept him or we can reject him. Okay? So there's your trilemma. Do you see this as being helpful? Do you think that this could be used in discussions with people? Say, now listen. Consider the claims of Jesus. What does that mean? If he actually said these things, then what are our options? Do you really think he was a lunatic? Do you really think he was just a flat old liar? Where does that leave us? That he is who he claimed to be. And the thing is, it's not just looking at his claims and looking at his life, it's looking at his death and resurrection, which is consistent with his claims. It proved that he was who he said he was. So when you bring in the resurrection, I think you really have a good case. So, all right. So that's the end of that section, so we'll slice the tape there. I want to ask you, are you, how is this looking?
Looks good, yeah.
So is it, you got me and the screen, is it shooting up, or are you just zooming on that, or how are you doing it?
If you're talking about the screen, I'm zooming.
Zooming in.
Yeah, zooming.
Yeah.
Just on the screen? You don't have me in there at all?
Because maybe it's too small to see. So if you record with you, I think I can't breathe.
Yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
small. Yeah, I think in some cases you'll want to have both, especially if you've already zoomed up. So you can zoom up and if there's something new, and then you can pull back and just breathe both of us. In some cases you'll just be on me.
Yeah.
Some cases you'll be with me on the board. You zoomed up when I was on the board too, right? Good. Okay. All right. Now I have a big question for you. We've talked about how Jesus is both human and divine. And I know you're going to say he's yet one person. He's not like a divine person and a human person somehow. So the question is, how do the two natures of Christ relate to one another? How do you get God in a human body without it being simply a divinely anointed human being? How do you get someone who's both 100% human and 100% God in the same person, so that there's two natures and one person? 100% God, 100% man, one person. Everything that it means for Jesus to be God, he was. Everything that it means for him to be a human, he was. And yet, he's one person. It's the mystery of the incarnation. And of course we say that a human father would not have worked with a human father. You had to have, the Holy Spirit be involved in the conception as he was. But how do these two natures relate? How do you describe the union between the human and the divine? There's a couple terms I want you to get really familiar with. Theandric union. Okay, so you see a word for God and a word for man embedded in that compound word there. Theandric union. Okay, so what's this saying? The divine human union. Okay, now this is a real union. It's not just a relationship. It's a real union. Theanthropos. What's that? Who's that referred to?
God-man with no hyphen. It's just God-man together.
Yes. Yes, you don't have to say God-man. You say theanthropos. Everybody say that.
Theanthropos.
Okay. Say theandric union too.
Theandric union.
Yeah. Okay, so these are going to refer to the incarnation. This person who was both human and divine. So, some things we want to talk about, we want to say about this. One thing we can say is what he was. And this is from church history. This is from some of the fathers, right? Some of these statements. What he was, he continued to be. What he was not, he took to himself. So this is describing how Jesus continued to be God while adding another nature to him as a single person. Or you could say, remaining what he was, he became what he was not. Now that's kind of easy to say. Everybody say that together.
Remaining what he was, he became what he was not.
And what was he?
God.
God. What was he not that he became?
Human.
Man, yeah, human. Yeah. You good? You could say it this way. God became man without ceasing to be God. So you can't say, it'd be really could be misleading for you simply to say, well, God became a man. God became man. Now, if you don't qualify that, if you don't keep going with that, what could someone think? God became a man.
Cease to be God.
Yeah, he transformed from being God into being a man. You know, it's like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they talk about Jesus being Michael the Archangel in his pre-existence, but then when he comes to earth, he's no longer Michael the Archangel, he is a man, and then when he becomes a spirit again, he leaves his body behind, his body is destroyed, dissolved in the gases or whatever, and now he becomes Michael the Archangel again, something like that. You know, so this is like becoming something that you weren't, well, ceasing what you were, and then going back to what you were. That's not the case with Jesus. Okay. Any other thoughts or question on that particular point? So this was not a conversion of the divinity into humanity. Not a conversion of divinity into humanity, but the assumption of humanity into God. He assumed the nature. He took upon himself a nature he did not have. And now he will always have that nature. Okay. Remember when we talked about special revelation in Jesus, and we said the difference between a theophany or Christophany and the incarnation was permanent. It was an actual identification with the human race because he became part of the human race by being a descendant of Mary, right? A descendant of David, a descendant of Adam, became part of the human race. A theophany or Christophany, even if you're talking about a materialized being who kind of looks like a human, it's not the same thing as an incarnation. With an incarnation, it's permanent. And it's organic. It's he's part of the human race, and it means to be human. It means to always be a human. So you have a never-dying soul, and someday you will be resurrected. So Jesus has to have a human soul and a permanent body. And of course, he is the first fruits of the resurrection. So he became one of us without ceasing to be God. All right. Any scriptural support for this? I have some verses that I want you to look up, some passages. I want you to take some time to look at these chapters and see if you can find, and if you're online, you can look these up while we're looking these up. See if you can find some verses, some statements that indicate not just that Jesus was God or that Jesus was man, but that there is a union. We're talking about a divine human person here. Okay. Any indication? Matthew 1, hearkening back to Isaiah 7:14. What do we see there? Who has Matthew? Who has John 1? Who wants to do John 1? Okay. Colossians 2 wants to find that in Colossians 2. Colossians 2, Philippians 2.
Sure.
Okay. 1 Timothy 3. James, okay. Okay, so what do we have here? Matthew 1. Who has that? David?
I have it here. You can hear me.
Okay. Well, no, did you find what we're talking about here? Did you find
Oh.
something in Matthew 1 that suggests that Jesus is a divine human being.
In verse 23, the prophecy from Isaiah is quoted. It says, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which means God with us.
Okay. So do you see both human and divine in the same verse? What do you see? He's born of a woman, and he shall be called Emmanuel, which is God with us. Okay, so both God and human. Okay? What about John 1? You see anything in John 1 that indicates an incarnation?
Verse 14, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." And also, to refer to that being God, in verse 1, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So, if the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, then God became flesh and dwelt among us.
Good. Excellent. See the incarnation there? Colossians 2.
Verse 9, "For in him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form."
There you go. All the fullness of the deity in bodily form. Good. Philippians 2. Anything in Philippians 2?
Yeah. Verses 5 through 8. "Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. And being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross." So though he was in the form of God, he took on, it says, being found in human form. So we had both forms
Yes. Yes.
parallel.
Yep. See the incarnation there? 1 Timothy 3.
Verse 16, "Great deeply confesses the mystery of God within us. He was manifested in the flesh, vindicated by the Spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, taken up in glory."
Okay. And so what are you seeing in there?
That he was flesh, but he also was God.
Okay. God manifested in the flesh. There you go. That's incarnation. This is what we're talking about. This is the doctrine that we teach. That God became man without ceasing to be God in the person of Jesus as the Son of God. Okay, so we're talking about the second person of the Trinity. Unfortunately, we have a whole history of the church and church fathers who've articulated theology in a way that, brand new convert, they read the Bible, they get saved, and then they try to figure out all this doctrine. Well, it's good that, it's good that you have teachers. It's good that we have a church that has articulated some of these things in creeds, after they met together in council, really smart guys who were close to the time of the apostles. And so we're gonna talk about the councils and the creeds and that sort of thing, what they came up with. But let's just let's talk about a couple more terms here. I'm going to use the term comunicatio idiomatum, the term perichoresis. So I want you to get familiar with that. Before I do, let me quote to you Gregory the theologian, okay, one of the church fathers. So this is talking about the God-man. So think about this. What's revealed in Scripture is this. He hungered, but he fed thousands. He was wearied, but he is the rest of them that are weary. He was heavy with sleep, but he walked lightly over the sea. Remember that situation? Sleeping in the boat, the thing? He prays, but he hears prayer. He weeps, but he causes tears to cease. He asked where Lazarus was laid, for he was man. But he raises Lazarus, for he was God. He is sold and very cheap, for it is only 30 pieces of silver. But he redeems the world. As a sheep, he is led to the slaughter. But, what's the other side of that? He is the shepherd of Israel, and now of the whole world also. As a lamb, he is silent, but he is the Word. He is wounded, but
Heals.
he heals every disease. He dies, but he gives life. So he's human, yet he's divine. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing juxtaposition. The divine human person, he comes into the world, and identifies fully with us, and then redeems us through that identification. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. Let's go to this term here, communicati idiomatum. This is a reference to this union, this intrapersonal permeation. So let's define these terms. We're talking about how these two natures relate to one another. And so you use this term to describe this concept, that each nature communicates its own properties to the single person. So idios means its own. So communicati, you get communication. So each nature communicates its own properties to the single person. So you have all the properties, everything that it means to be human, everything that it means to be divine, is contributed to the single person. So it's like a wedding of the two natures. Okay? So you have one person that embraces two natures and their idiomata, which is their distinctive properties. So as human, Jesus exercised divine attributes. Through his divine nature. So as human, he's exercising divine attributes through his divine nature. But the Savior would suffer, be powerless, and die as a human being, not in his human nature, but through his possession of humanity. So he's doing both things. He's participating in the majesty of the divinity as a human. He's participating in the humiliation of humanity through his humanity, but as God. Okay. This other term, perichoresis. You've heard of a perimeter? Okay. So think this. Literally, this is an embracing, a proceeding around, a walking about on all sides, the existence of one within another. Think mutual indwelling of the two natures. This same term is used in regards to the Trinity to refer to how each member of the Trinity indwells one another. There's a mutual permeation of persons, dwelling persons within another. The same term can be used to talk about the two natures. You have your divine and the human and how they permeate one another. They participate in each other. There's a mutual indwelling, an active intermingling, an interpenetration.
So subtract
The
from
deity participating in
just the
humanity
checkpoints, subtract
and
from
humanity
one,
in the
so
deity
you-
without blurring or confusing either. So again, as human, he's participating in
So if you
the
just
glory
did
of
one question, left the other
divinity,
blank,
and
you get 50%.
as divine, he's participating in the suffering of humanity. Okay, so this is where I stop and I ask you to talk about this concept with each
For
other.
future reference
among
for 5,
yourselves.
how would you
Okay, so
argue
let's,
scripturally and logically?
Let's pause
Do you
and
actually want an argument, because I just had to get a human
explain
body
these
references, he had
terms
human soul references.
to each other.
Do you actually want like a described, like short
Well-
paragraph, or?